we're going to have a next generation of economies in games, because Web3 is going to shift this to a large degree. And we're just at the like we're at the beginning, right, in terms of the
Yeah.
kinds of economies that will exist. And what's interesting is I actually think a lot of these game economies are going to start to influence kind of like macroeconomic, like global economies, because there's if there's like hundreds of thousands of games being built and each one of them has a slightly different economy, we're going to discover something as a species like, whoa, like this is a really powerful economy design. We should actually extrapolate that and implement it more broadly, not just in the game
Right.
world, but like into the physical world.
I'm here with Michael, who's the chief storyteller and co-founder of Horizon.io. Now, Horizon have built this incredible ecosystem of Web3 tools designed to make building and using Web3 a lot easier than it is right now. I think that's a fantastic initiative that you guys have, and thanks a lot for joining me, Michael.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Andre. It's great to be here.
Let me just start by saying that I love the vaporwave aesthetic of your website, like that sun, which is like kind of orangey with the background. It's honestly so cool. I'm a fan of those like cyberpunk vaporwave aesthetics. Do you want to maybe start by exploring a little bit the vision behind Horizon and giving like a high level introduction into what Horizon is and what got you guys and especially you as a co founder to kind of start that idea?
Yeah. Um, so our mission is to make Web3 easy, fun, and accessible for users and builders, so everyone. And personally, I've been in the blockchain space since 2010. Met Vitalik Buterin in 2014 before Ethereum's launch, and back then really fell in love with the notion of Web3 and this next generation of the internet, like these new applications and experiences where both users and creators share in the value of the ecosystems they participate in, more of a symbiotic internet. And at Horizon, one of my co-founders, Peter, and our CEO, to my knowledge, was the first person to conceptualize blockchain games. And he told me
Right.
about this idea back in 2017, and I thought, like, holy shit, this is it. This is how we can welcome the world to Web3 and do it in a really fun and playful and loving way. That's not necessarily about like explicitly educating people about why this space is so cool, but just giving them really wonderful experiences and then welcoming them into this ecosystem. And so, yeah, we set out, we founded Horizon at the end of 2017. And again, it was all about making Web3 easy, fun, and accessible for everyone. And we started with a game. So we wanted to make an experience that our friends could enjoy. And we didn't want them to have any blockchain or crypto knowledge. We just wanted to give
Right.
them something that they could play and enjoy. So Skyweaver is a free to play trading card game where you can actually own and trade the cards, right? Because they're digital collectibles secured on the blockchain. And in order to make Skyweaver, starting 6 years ago, we knew we were going to have to overcome a ton of pain points around blockchain infrastructure in order to deliver a seamless experience that anyone could enjoy. And
Right.
this ranges from things like wallets and how you onboard into a game or application, things like transactions and gas fees and payments, because there's added complexity when you deal with the blockchain. Things like working with blockchain data and indexing chains and displaying information to your users. All sorts of stuff, and we over the years we've solved these infrastructure pain points and productized our solutions into Sequence. And Sequence is our all-in-one development platform to make building Web3 games easy.
Right. So you first had the game out, and as you were building the infrastructure for the game, you realized that there's something really special there, which is the infrastructure itself, which probably nobody had it at the time.
Yeah, although it wasn't like we knew it right from the beginning that the infrastructure was essential because there just wasn't anything available, right? So we knew right from the outset we were building both the game and the developer platform, because it was out of necessity. And the game, of course, informs all of our thinking around how to build a platform, rather than
Right.
just speculate because we all, we wanted to build both the product, both the game and the platform. But without a game, we wouldn't have really known how to approach it, right? Like, how do you build a developer platform if you're not actually building it for a real world use case?
Right, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, because you first kind of have to build it yourself to understand what's required in order to then provide the relevant services. So you
Yeah,
can tell that there's a lot of thought going into making this like the right product for that kind of core audience. Which also brings me to the point that we were just discussing a few minutes before, which is the need for Web3 developers to have this infrastructure, which is a trend that I've noticed has been going on for a few years now. And it kind of reminds me of back in the 90s where you had, I don't remember the name of the guy, but if you remember that famous speech that this .NET lead, like kind of the bald guy that was all sweaty wearing a blue shirt, and he said the secret to .NET is developers, developers,
Developers, developers, developers, developers, developers, developers. Developers, 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 developers. Yes!
it was such an iconic speech, and it was back in the 90s, and I just feel like this is that all over again because it's a really, well, still a relatively new technology that we keep building on top of. This series of solutions are instrumental to then allowing the end user to effectively have a seamless product, and I'm still yet to see it from that perspective. And I still think we need to take great care of developers first before getting at the very end of that chain, basically.
absolutely. Developers are the ones who build the experiences that end users will ultimately come to enjoy, right? And oftentimes, users might not even know what's possible, right? Like, they might not be imagining what they could have because they're not as tapped into the technological innovation, whereas developers are exploring it. They're looking to create something brand new. They're looking to combine different technologies to have a competitive edge and to enable a new kind of creation that they find personally exciting. And so we need to give them tools that they can work with, because up until recently, working with blockchain technologies was very cumbersome and, opaque and hard. It's a nascent technology, so it's hard to figure out.
Yeah.
And especially if you're a game developer, you're not necessarily, in most cases, you're not an infrastructure developer, right? And especially not a Web3 infrastructure developer working with blockchain. So it's kind of outside of your domain of expertise if you're a game developer. So for us, we need to give those game devs who, they understand how to build amazing player experiences and game economies and communities. We need to give them the tools so that they can seamlessly and effectively interact with and build experiences that are blockchain enhanced. Yeah, it's really important to enable this next generation of games and experiences.
Right. Yeah. And I've actually had a quick play with your sequence builder. And I think I've managed to deploy a contract in about 1.5 minutes. And it
Nice.
cost me, I did it on Polygon, and it cost me 11 pence. So that's like, yeah, 12 or 13 pennies or something like that. Super
Nice.
cheap.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's
so in
awesome.
terms of Thanks, man. In terms of the games that you're planning to support, or the games that you have in mind, so Skyweaver is obviously is an online game where you have this trading and battle mechanic, a little bit like Gwent for people that don't know. Maybe you're more familiar with Gwent. Are you thinking in terms of massive MMO or online games?
So, as a company, as Horizon, Skyweaver is likely the only game that we'll ever make. And it's a trading card game. And yeah, it's a good comparison to Gwent. Other people have compared it to like somewhere in between Hearthstone and Magic the Gathering,
Right.
and which makes sense because we've actually had game designers from each of those games on our team. So a lot of influence from those, with of course like unique mechanics and game design and economies and such. In terms of other games though, because Sequence, it enables all kinds of games. Like it's agnostic in that sense, but of course, most of the games building with Sequence will be live operations games. And so this includes, like, in addition to trading card games, there will be RPGs and MMOs and strategy games, and really like anything. Even casual games can leverage Sequence because it's a fairly generalized infrastructure platform. in
Hmm.
terms of how it enables games. It's not as though there's infrastructure that's specific to a trading card game. But yeah, so we already have at the moment, I think we have 37 or 38 live gaming partners, and they're across a variety of genres.
Oh wow.
All the ones I just mentioned, even things like farming simulators and stuff like that.
I gotta
And
love farming simulators.
yeah, there's actually a couple of them. It's pretty cool, and like racing games and yeah, all sorts of just like different genres. And we have in addition to the 37 live partners, we have over 80 games in total that are working with us officially, like in official capacity. And then there's hundreds more that are exploring it and we're in the conversation phase, or that are kind of just working behind the scenes. And these range from indie startups with a few developers on their team all the way up to several of the world's largest AAA game publishers that everyone would recognize their names if they're a game if they're a gamer. So yeah, on that front, like stay tuned for more announcements. We'll be releasing more and more information about that. But it's it's across genres.
That sounds genuinely exciting. Knowing that a lot of game developers, AAA game developers, like you said, are working towards building more Web3 based games. I think that just gives, especially if you're considering MMO and online games, it gives that kind of economy, that sense that that economy is real and you can take it outside of the game itself. There was one other game that I was actually talking to the guys at the Paint Swap team. So they work with a Phantom Foundation, and they built this game called S for Kingdom, and it's an online idle play game where you have a character and you get items, and then you do better things with those items, like you get better at chopping wood or mining coal or stuff like that. And the items you get and the tokens you get in the game are tradable on real markets. Like you can trade them outside, you can trade them on a cryptocurrency exchange, or you on a dex or something like that. And I think that's a completely new layer and level to games that we haven't really had before. And I'm personally very excited once we have complex MMO worlds adding that kind of mechanic into their worlds.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's incredibly exciting to have these open economies. Um, it more mimics the physical world in the sense that if you or I, if we buy a laptop from Apple, it's not as though Apple, maintains a sense of ownership
Right.
over that laptop, right? Like you or I could sell it to someone anywhere in the world or gift it to whoever, right? We're not restricted to whatever Apple's terms and conditions are about who we could give it to. And so we're starting to see the digital world mimic those kind of physical ownership property rights and then bring that to the digital world so that in games, just like you say, you can take the items you own and yeah, trade them in open markets, or just gift them to your friend if you want, or there can even be like lending mechanisms around them, or you can create additional and like supplementary experiences around those game items. Like just as an example, someone could take a Skyweaver trading card, right, and they could
Right.
make a new game around those items with different rules. Just like you could take a Pokemon card in real life and you could decide with your friends, like, oh, we're going to play a different version of the game that we just made up. So it's
Right.
really extending, yeah, true ownership to folks, and then that unlocks new kinds of economies. It also unlocks new game design possibilities, right? Because like you can even have side quests or like quests that are kind of independent of the original game design that exist amongst communities, whereby it might just be like, oh, you have to collect 10 of this kind of card, and then when you're in this community over here and you have that, you get rewarded with something. Maybe it's like it could be a trip, for example, or an invite to an exclusive event. Brands can even like third party brands can even add value to a game world. So if you were to imagine something like NBA 2K, right, like the basketball game,
Right.
um, and players in it who buy gear for their players, and they might buy, like, let's say they buy Adidas shoes, for example, and Adidas, the brand. Now I'm saying, like, imagine these were Web3 items. Like, imagine the Adidas shoes you
Right.
bought in NBA 2K were secure to the blockchain. Well, then, like, Adidas as a brand could actually just look at the blockchain and see, oh, which players own Adidas shoes in NBA 2K, and then they could airdrop them a gift of some sort. Adidas could be like, oh, here's an additional pair of Adidas shoes, or like here's a feature to make them like invisible or flame with fire, or glow or whatever. Or you could also give those players like vouchers to real world merchandise. So like an Adidas hoodie, you could be like, here, this for that, or 50% off or whatever. So it allows third party brands to add additional value and utility to the player's experience, which then, of course, enhances not only the player's experience, but also NBA 2K as a game and makes it an
Right.
even more exciting destination. So you're creating this like wonderful symbiosis where Adidas wins, NBA 2K wins, and the players win. So it's like
Right.
it's an area that's like incredibly ripe for innovation and experimentation that we're really excited about.
I think that's really really the interesting part of it is that effectively it's not, at the end of the day, it's not just about integrating different chains or different data to communicate with different systems. You're also opening up the possibilities of what a game might look like, and how interactions between different game developers, different brands, different partners can all work. Like this basically creates a clean slate where different parties that didn't used to collaborate unless it was super formal can now collaborate in a much more seamless way. And that kind of also speaks to your guys' approach for the tools themselves. For Sequence, for instance, you have this really cool Unity engine SDK. We
Mhm.
spoke a little bit about it last week, and that got me really interested in it. The fact that you can query the chain or use on-chain data in Unity SDK, in Unity through your SDK. And I
Mhm.
think that's really fascinating. If you want to share more information around how that would work, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, so it's both it's Unity, it's Unreal Engine. It's we really want to make it easy for game developers where they're building, because not every game is built in the browser, right? In fact, most
Right.
of them aren't. There are a lot of incredible browser games for sure, and more coming online. And so we serve those folks. But yeah, like a lot of game devs are building on Unreal Engine, they're building on Unity. So we want to make our entire stack accessible and easy for those folks to leverage, so that exactly, man, like you can have marketplaces in game where you're trading Web3 items in a secondary market. There can also be primary sales. Furthermore, like players can log into their Unity game using the Sequence wallet infrastructure. But it's basically allows a game dev to make the wallet invisible to their players, essentially. Like it feels and looks like a player account that's similar to in traditional gaming, and yet it's a
Hmm.
non-custodial smart contract wallet behind the scenes. But it's as seamless as like using Stripe is in terms of making a payment with a credit card or a debit card on the internet, right? Like most folks aren't even aware that they're interacting with Stripe. And similarly, a lot of gamers won't even know that Sequence is powering the game and the accounts behind the scenes. And then, yeah, that'll work on Unity, Unreal Engine powered games, mobile games, browser based games, because it's all about allowing devs to build like for their users, right? And we
Right.
don't necessarily want to dictate like where they are, because like the game dev's going to have a better sense of where they want to find their users and what they like.
Right. And regarding getting the data from the chain,
Mhm.
is there any delay? Are developers expected to treat this data in any way different than they query regular data? Are there any best practices or anything to kind of, uh, yeah, is there a special way of treating on-chain data in a game than normal data?
Yeah, so we've done a lot of work around working with blockchain data. We built both Web3's fastest indexer, and
Okay.
we created a node gateway. So the node gateway, of course, like as you know, and probably a lot of the viewers know, that every blockchain application, whether it's a game or something else, is interacting with a node in some way. And nodes occasionally go down, which then that sucks for the players, for the game
Yeah.
dev, because then they can't yeah, they can't really play the game, or there's certain aspects of the game that are blocked at that time. So we created a node gateway that aggregates the various leading node providers, including some internally managed nodes. And then in the event that one of them goes down, the node gateway just automatically switches between them to ensure that your game is always up and running for you and your players. And then we also built the indexer, which allows games and brands and whoever else is developing with Sequence to query NFT token data, blockchain data generally, including all metadata, balances, history, prices, and display that information to their players in real time. Because it's very important, especially depending on the kind of game you're building, it's very important that the on-chain data is delivered to users in real time. Otherwise, it could break the experience or something. For example, if you needed to own a particular collectible to play in a certain level or world,
Right.
if the data is not there in real time, then the user could get kicked out of that world, right? So it's very important that you're indexing the chain and serving that data to users in real time.
Right. And you're only indexing, I'm guessing, a very small slice of the chain. You're checking whether, okay, is this item owned by that master contract, and does this player own that item? That's basically what indexing does. You wouldn't like query a vast range of data normally.
Yeah, well, the indexer can query any data, but you as an individual dev, it's specific to what you're seeking. And so, if folks even want to try it out, you can go to sequence.build, and there's an explore button, and you can just type in whatever contract you're looking for or collectibles, and you can see all of the data across all EVM chains. Yeah, so
Oh,
it's
wow.
quite robust and powerful, and also built for game dev. So it's really cool.
Right. Yeah. That is really cool. I do like the combination between the traditional development layer and then you adding this another layer of complexity. Well, I say complexity, but in reality, you're simplifying what is otherwise a very complex mechanism where a lot of things can go wrong, and you guys are just ensuring that as little of this as possible goes wrong and it's all managed and accounted for. In terms of if you're thinking about small developer teams or small gaming studios, or just independent developers that are looking to build or to experiment with Web3 gaming and Web3 platforms, what is the easiest way for them to onboard onto the sequence builder and to get started? And are there any fees for them to be aware of?
Yeah, so sequence.build is how you access the builder. And just so everyone knows, the builder is actually a no code dashboard for builders and brands and games to create and manage their Web3 experiences. So it empowers both technical devs, of course, and then even non technical folks to
Hmm.
deliver amazing Web3 experiences to their desired audience. And yeah, so go to sequence.build, you'll log in, and it's free to get started. You can just start playing away. You'll see you're given a number of credits, like compute usage credits, and you can just use those. And then once you hit certain thresholds, then you'll be prompted to upgrade your account for paid services. And then there's also we monetize via the marketplace. So we have the Sequence Marketplaces solution, which allows you to actually spin up a custom branded in-game or in-app marketplace. You can do it in less than 1 minute and have your own marketplace. And so and you can also set the royalties. Royalties are enforced in these marketplaces, which is
Hmm.
excellent for both the game dev and the creators and even the players, because it helps foster a more sustainable
Right.
economy. And and the royalties can be customized based on what the developer wants. And then we, as Sequence, we take a fee from that as well. So that's how we monetize. And but yeah, folks can just get started. And then of course, if you have any questions, there's help buttons and things of that nature within Builder. You can also join our Discord, which is discord.gg/sequence. There's a developer community there, including our own team. You can ask questions. Yeah, there's FAQ, like a lot of support if you need it. Docs, of course, as well. But yeah, you can just get started at sequence.build.
Awesome. I'll make sure to leave links in the description down below for people to follow along and to go and play around in the sandbox. For the marketplace, because I also had a look at that, and there's a specific white label marketplace that you can create for game items, semi fungible, as you call them on the website. And then there's another one for non fungible items. So is the semi fungible one, is the only difference the fact that it's 1155s? Is that the gaming aspect of it, or are there any other mechanisms that make it more game focused rather than the regular one?
Yeah, so we actually co-created the ERC 1155 standard 5 years ago, I think it
Oh,
was.
damn, well done.
And yeah,
Saved a lot of people a lot of money there.
yeah, yeah. Our head of product, Philippe Castonguay was instrumental in the creation of ERC 1155, and we needed to do it because in our game Skyweaver, it's a trading card game, and there's I think there are about 800 different characters in the game, and there can be an arbitrary number of copies of a given character. Let's say we're talking about the Ethera card, so there could be 15,000 copies of that card, and then there might be 40,000 copies of a blue dragon, or
Right.
whatever. So we needed to have a token standard that could enable multiple copies of an item that could then be like priced the same way, right? Because the thing with ERC 721 is that each one of them is technically its own market.
Yeah.
um, Whereas with
Yeah.
ERC 1155 you can do things like an automated market maker exchange, where the price is algorithmically calculated based on the supply and demand of
Yeah.
um, of those cards, right? So we created that token standard, and it's also perfectly suitable to most kinds of game items. In fact, because most game items have multiple copies. Whether you're talking about like cars in a racing game, or ammunition, or like farming supplies, or tools, or skins, or whatever. And so yeah, so the ERC 1155 and then the sequence marketplaces allows you to create an automated market maker. So it just makes, for anyone that doesn't really know what an AMM, an automated market maker, is, what it does is it makes buying for players instant, easy, and seamless. It's just like click and buy, um, or click and sell, and they don't have to wait. So it's really powerful because that's great for game economies when players don't want to be waiting around. They might just need something right away, so they got to purchase it to keep their game experience going. Now, there are instances in which ERC 721, the NFT, non fungible token standard, makes sense too, right? Like, let's say you
Yeah.
have a car, I mentioned car over on 1155, but let's say you have a unique car that's like decked out and has different features on it, and it's a one of one, right? Or if you win some special trophy because you won a tournament and you're the only one that has it. Or maybe it's land in a um, some kind of metaverse or game world experiences where that plot of land is unique to all others, then yeah, it makes sense to have the 721 standard. And there's many other examples. And
Hmm.
typically with 721s, you kind of have to do an order book experience for marketplaces, whereby you place a bid order saying like, oh, I'll pay $10 for this thing, and then the seller either accepts or denies that. So sequence marketplaces allows you to have both of those experiences in a way that's seamless for players. So for 721s, they can bid or sell at whatever price they want. For 1155s, they can do it the AMM, instant click buy sell, of that nature. But it's really, the marketplace's tool is really made so that it allows game devs to have that marketplace experience in their game, rather than driving folks to a third party marketplace,
Yeah.
which of course breaks the game experience. And maybe you send them to a third party and players aren't uh, they don't know why they're going to a third party marketplace, and they also might not understand or trust the third party marketplace because it's not branded the same as your game. Whereas if it's just in your gaming experience, players, they trust it. It makes it more seamless, and then you also get to retain them within your game experience, which you spent a lot of time and energy trying to bring them into in the first place.
Right, exactly. And just going back to the previous idea of having different partners rewarding users that have maybe different certain set of items and stuff, it's a lot. it's a lot easier for everyone to see the current supply and demand of items and to figure out what is exactly on the market. And I feel that's always been like, I used to be into MMO games. I'm not anymore right now just because of lack of time, but I do love them. I used to play Cabal Online, and I played a bunch of other MMO games. And you would typically have an in-game, well, not store as in shop, but the store where people buy and sell items, like traders, right? In-game
Mhm,
traders.
mhm.
But you wouldn't really have any idea about the supply of a certain item. Like if you're really looking for a rare sword, or if you happen to find a rare sword in a dungeon, how would you really know how rare this sword is? There would be no way. You could probably get an approximation by looking at things like Steam or something, but with Web3, with 1155s, and with, you could build dashboards. Then you could build all sorts of, you could visualize game item data, open and available for everyone, and that would create a fair in-game economy as well as a result of that.
Totally. And the game dev could either build it or the community could even build those dashboards, right? Because they can query the blockchain. They could use the sequence builder to create dashboards around it. So because it's transparent, and to your point, yeah, get a correct and accurate understanding of that economy. So yeah, it's super powerful.
Yeah, and another point I meant to mention about the 1155s, just for people who don't understand the exact difference, is a 721. You could have multiple of 721, right? But you would always have a different. You wouldn't have the exact item. You could have the same looking item with the same image, but you'd have a different ID of that item. Whereas 1155s have the exact same item, so it's basically like building two different cars that look like each other versus cloning the same car to have more of that exact car. That is the
Exactly.
difference. And also, to my understanding, that's also why it's a lot cheaper to run 1155 contracts and to make transactions with 1155 items rather than 721s.
Yes. Yep. Exactly.
Just wanted to go back into Skyweaver for a moment and
Cool.
talk about fungibility and volume of items. Like, obviously, it's a game that's growing and more players are being onboarded. How do you decide what is the current supply of a certain item? Is there a limited supply? And
Mhm.
what happens once these all of the items are owned and the treasury can't create any more items? Like, what's the
Yeah.
gaming dynamics in that perspective?
So it depends on the kind of item and game mode. And we are actually in the process of releasing a massive update to Skyweaver that I won't go into a tremendous amount of detail, but it has new game modes, like tournament systems, all sorts of incredible innovations to the game to really help it become this crossover game that brings the traditional trading card game audience, both physical and digital folks, over to Skyweaver and have this incredible experience that happens to be powered by Web3. And so, but in terms of items, it just depends. Like, for example, we had this game mode called Conquest,
Hmm.
whereby the uh, the winners of it. Okay, so I'll take a step back. There are
Sure.
base cards in the game, which are non-blockchain items, and they allow you free access to the game, and you would never have to pay anything. It's a free-to-play game, so you could just play with these base cards, and you would unlock over time by just leveling up. You would unlock access to all the different kinds of strategies, or you could buy silver cards, which are ERC 1155. So we
Right.
call them SFTs, semi fungible tokens. Other people call them NFTs, even though technically they're not non fungible because they are fungible with another card,
Yeah.
but they're a digital collectible. And so you can buy that to kind of like accelerate a bit, different strategies that in decks you can build. And then there are gold cards, which are an even, they're a rarer form of the ownable cards, but the base silver and gold all have the same mechanics. It's
Hmm.
just there's differences in terms of ownership and rarity. And so the way that the gold cards were minted into existence was via this game mode called Conquest, which was a competitive mode that you would actually buy into with a silver card or with a $1.50 USDC. And the winners of the conquest, which was like this kind of 8-person tournament thing. The winners would generate a gold card, so it would mint into existence. It didn't exist previously. They would mint it into existence by winning the
Right.
conquest, and then they would own it. And we would, for each week, we would have 8 different characters that could be won via as a gold card via conquest. And then
Right.
after that week, you could never, those gold cards would never be minted again of those 8 characters. And then the next week, there'd be a new 8 characters. So the supply of those golds just depended entirely on how many conquest tournaments were played each week. And then, you could have syncs whereby someone just destroys a card, like they send it, they burn it, and then that would reduce the supply, but it would never increase.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And is it? Do you guys work with? Do you have a DAO that kind of helps you make decisions around the kind of direction of the game, or do you have a community that helps with ideas or new features that they want adding to the game or anything like that?
Yeah, our community is huge. No official DAO, but our community is like, community is everything in a game, right? Like, they're the ones
Right.
who are playing it, they're the ones you're building for. You want them to love and appreciate it and derive tremendous joy and value from it. Um, and I don't necessarily mean value in the economic sense. I mean it in just
Sure.
like in terms of fun. And yeah, if there can be some economic value, of course, as well. Um, but yeah, we've been listening to our community. Like, we've been building the game out in the open for, I mean, we've been building it for 6 years, and we've been building it in the open for the last like 5 and a bit years
Oh
since
wow.
our very first alpha. And it's been in open beta for almost 2 years now. I think I may be mixing up my timelines, but I think it's almost 2 years or a year and a half. And yeah, so we're constantly listening to our players. We have things like private test servers in which we invite select members of the community who are super passionate to test out new features and give us feedback on how those should change. We
Right.
consult with various economists about how to level up the economy, which we're doing in this new massive update to Skyweaver. So yeah, it's very much, in a sense, it's built by a village. It's built by a lot of people, and
Yeah.
there's feedback solicited from everywhere. But at the same time, our team maintains authority over what actually ends up in the game. So it's not like designed by committee. It's feedback and ideas solicited and created by the entire committee, but then decisions are made by, our game director, the game design team, our economy team. Um, yeah.
Right. But I think that's exactly what drives a lot of value from a Web3 organization is this two-way communication that you didn't used to have it nearly as much as you do right now. It's this close interaction between the community, between the people who know the solution and know what they want from it, and also the people who have built it. And I just feel like it's creating almost like a flat structure between the organization and the user base with people listening on both sides. I'm
Yeah.
really excited about how all of that works and seeing more and more organizations just work closely with the people to create the products and the services that they want. And I do hope this continues in the future, and I hope that the future of Web3 remains in as much as possible decentralized and people being able to make decisions about the software or the games that they're passionate about. We all remember $3 horse armor that nobody wanted. So it's really important to have your finger on the pulse and just talk to the community at all times, I feel.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's incredibly exciting too. And to your point, there's many different structures and frameworks for which games can be developed now. There are DAOs that govern certain games. We'll see how those work, because it does kind of depend on how much game design experience you have. Like, building a game is very complex. It's difficult. So it does, in many scenarios, help to have decision makers with authority that can make kind of unilateral decisions,
Hmm.
because I think communities are amazing at identifying problems in games, because you might have a game design team might have an idea for what will work, but then once it's unleashed in the wild, folks find all sorts of exploits or issues
Right.
or bugs or whatever, right? And then they tell you like, hey, this thing's broken, this isn't working. And then sometimes they do actually, the community actually will give you the exact solution. Like someone will say, like, I think you should do it like this. And then you think about it and you're like, yeah, that is the right approach. Other times, people will provide you a solution that they might think they want, but in fact, it would actually be terrible for the game. But they have identified the problem, which is incredibly valuable. So yeah,
Right.
I think the symbiosis, the feedback loop, is essential for a lot of these live ops games to make something that the players adore, right? Because that's ultimately, again, what you're trying to do is just create an experience that the players will love, that they'll tell the friends about, that they'll keep playing for years.
Yeah. Do you think there's a potential use case for in-game rewards or tokens of some kind for people who do join early stage, like open beta or closed beta, even to kind
Yeah.
of monetize those bug bounties that people like put their time into?
Yeah. So like, I'll answer that question in two parts. Like one, in Skyweaver, as an example, I know many other games do this as well. We gave all of our alpha testers and private betas, like earlier versions of the game, we gave them all these crystals in the game. So they're ERC 1155s, but they're capped based on like there's a finite number of them, and none will ever be
Right.
created. So I think there's like I forget the exact numbers, but some of the crystals might have a supply of like 50. And then other of the crystals might have a supply of like 2,000. And as the game keeps growing, right, those crystals are pretty cool because you see them on the player's title and profile. And so they might want to sell that at some point because there is demand for them. Um, and then yeah, in terms of other kinds of rewards and bug bounties for sure. Like I think that that makes a lot of sense to give like we've put out bounties for the community to create specific features for the game or like a tool that we could leverage for our marketing team as an example. Or if someone, yeah, like they figure out the solution to a particular issue, bounties are a really wonderful way to like create even deeper engagement for those who are, technically inclined.
Yeah. What is your vision of the gaming industry, say 5 to 10 years from now?
So I think the majority of games being built 5 to 10 years from now will leverage Web3 in some way. Um, and I think we're going to unlock a lot of new game design space. There's going to be these innovative player experiences that weren't possible prior to. Um, every kind of new era of gaming has done this. It's unlocked new player experiences. Some might argue that free to play didn't as much, but I still think it did because it unlocked like a lot of mobile casual games and just like new kind of economic models too for game devs.
Mm.
But yeah, I think the majority of games in 5 to 10 years that are being built at that time will leverage Web3 in some way for these unprecedented player experiences. And I think much more passionate communities because of the things we've been talking about, like this sense of ownership that a community and players will have in a game, this sense of participation that they have towards how the game evolves. And we're going to
Right.
have a next generation of economies in games because Web3 is going to shift this to a large degree. And we're just at the like we're at the beginning, right, in terms of the
Yeah.
kinds of economies that will exist. And what's interesting is I actually think a lot of these game economies are going to start to influence kind of like macroeconomic, like global economies, because there's, if there's like hundreds of thousands of games being built and each one of them has a slightly different economy, we're going to discover something as a species like whoa, like this is a really powerful economy design. We should actually extrapolate that and implement it more broadly, not just in the game
Right.
world but like into the physical world. Because we're now testing like kind of real like equivalents of real economies rather than totally like with real ownership. And I
Right.
think yeah, I'm so excited for the next 5 to 10 years and then beyond that too, because I think the experience are going to be more immersive. more symbiotic, more fun. I think people are going to derive more meaning from them. And
Mm.
then when you start layering technologies like VR and AR and things like Apple Vision Pro and
Oh man, that Apple Vision Pro is crazy. I can't wait to see like the second or third iteration of it. People
yeah,
are gonna stop leaving their houses. I'm 100% convinced people will live in the Vision Pro for like the vast majority of the day. I'm not sure if you've played it or if you've heard of it, but there was a very good game that explored this concept. It was called Dreamfall: The Longest Chapters.
I
It's a
haven't.
game from 2004, I believe. So you're playing as this girl called Zoe Castillo, and all of a sudden you realize that there's actually two worlds. There's one world that's very science, very tech driven. You have flying cars and maglev trains. And one of the other things you have is this device that you just put on your face and it transports you into this other world, which is a magical world full of mythical beings, and it's ruled by magic. But it turns out that these both worlds are actually real, and that's just the mechanism that allows you to connect to that other world. So in the technological world, people are addicted to these things because then they can go to this magical world and have different kind of interactions that are completely alien from that world.
Man, yeah. So you may have noticed on Horizon.io, we talk about a new dimension where
Yeah,
economies are fun,
yeah.
accessible, and for the benefit of all participants. And it's because like this next generation of games that's powered by Web3 and then might leverage also VR and AR and Apple Vision Pro and these different kinds of devices. It actually is another dimension, another layer of reality that people can explore and participate and enjoy. And it's not less real than this realm of reality. It's just maybe it's less physical. um,
Mm,
but or there might be haptic experiences in which it becomes seemingly as physical. And this
yeah.
contemplation always makes me think that we already exist in a blockchain based virtual reality, the one that you and I are communicating in, and like our clothes are NFTs or SFTs secured to the blockchain that prove that I can't wear the t-shirt at this t-shirt at the same time you're wearing it.
Yeah, I mean,
And
100%. Who's to say what's real and what's not? Because we're here having a conversation through magic underwater internet cables, right? And I'm in my living room. You're in your office, and all. But it is real. Even though we're not physically in this space, the experience that we're having is real as it can be, through camera, audio, all that. But imagine if you could stimulate the brain to
yeah,
feel sensations or emotions or that would be 100% a real experience, and as it is exciting, it's also frightening to think about at the same time.
totally, man. I mean, did you see the interview between Lex Friedman and Mark Zuckerberg in the Meta world?
I saw snippets of it. I watched like a
Yeah.
compilation of the best bits of it. Yeah.
Yeah, like I'm pretty sure it doesn't have haptic sense sense yet, but when Lex is in this virtual experience, like a VR experience, and
Yeah.
interacting with Mark Zuckerberg, it's almost as though he's having this kind of as though he's seeing God, because it's like he realizes, he's like, his brain starts to not be able to differentiate between the fact that he's in a virtual experience. It just starts feeling so real to him that he's like, whoa, like he feels as though he's with Mark in this other realm, and
Yeah.
unaware that it's a virtual experience. And then it makes him question, like, okay, what is real? And I agree with your point of it's wonderful, and simultaneously there is a frightening component to it, because I don't particularly desire a world where people are just sitting in their house all day and like drinking through a straw, some kind of supplement.
Yeah.
Like, I think we remain biological beings, and our physical hardware, our bodies require movement and activity to create and enable like proper hormonal response within our physiological ecosystem.
Right.
And but I mean, at the same time, if in fact, like maybe you and I right now are in a virtual reality, right? And these bodies we can move, and it's as real and stimulating as we've ever known. So maybe we are sitting in a pod somewhere, but because we're stimulating our neurology in a particular way, that like our physical vessels elsewhere, or if we even have a physical elsewhere in the other dimension, like maybe it's
Yeah.
fine and perfectly healthy. I don't know. And maybe that's achievable in this next iteration. But yeah, obviously, like lots to think about, and both like awe inspiring, and to your point, at the same time, there is a frightening component to it.
I think if there's a balance to it, though, then that could definitely work. I feel like having a virtual space where you could have real experiences is needed purely because sometimes you have to communicate in an increasingly globalized world. You have to communicate with people remotely. You have to work with people remotely as well. So it makes perfect sense. I also think there will definitely be some people that are going to overdo it and are going to end up obsessing over that reality. But that's with all things. I feel like there's a
100%.
certain thing about human beings that makes them obsess over something or gets them addicted to something. I'm not sure exactly what it is or to put my finger on, but it's humans. And if we learn to become better humans and control those urges, I feel like we shouldn't put a foot in front of innovation because
Yeah,
what if we get addicted to it? Yeah. Well, I
totally,
hope
man.
we do get addicted to it and we learn from it.
Yeah, man. I mean, and to your point, like there's a famous neuroscientist named Dr. Carl Hart, and in all the studies and like scientific exploration he's done, he's concluded, whether he's right or wrong, I don't know, but he's concluded that there is no activity or substance on earth that is any more addictive than any other. So like like heroin has the same addictive properties as going to the gym does, as going for long walks, as video games do, as writing does, as painting does. And it just depends on the individual human and their upbringing and genetics and environment and everything. And so I agree with your point that like all tools have the potential for wonderful creations and for being exploited and overdone and detrimental. Like you could use a pencil to create beautiful art and poetry, or you could use it for violence by like
Yeah.
stabbing something with it, right? Like it's a neutral thing. So I agree with you that we shouldn't like halt innovation around these technologies, because we're gonna, and I think historically most almost all technologies, of course not every single one, but almost all technologies have been net beneficial, even if
Yep.
they have some downsides to them. And on if you take all of them together, it's definitely net beneficial, at least in my opinion, and I think most people. So it's good to continue the exploration. And yeah, at times like regulation and oversight is required to just like keep things on the rails and not have us go too far out of control. But yeah, I think it's like I'm tremendously optimistic, and I always have been, about where we're heading, because I also think a lot of the people building these things have good intentions. I know like we do, like our company values that love openness and play, right? So that's what we're trying to infuse more of into the world. And I know we're not the only ones. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm really optimistic and excited.
And it's also the more we learn about ourselves as humans, the more we can mediate any kind of addiction or anything like that. I'm just gonna look it up because I've recently heard a quick talk between Andrew Huberman, and David Goggins about a certain part of the brain that was just discovered recently, and it was called. Tell you right now. Um, it's called the mid cingulate cortex. You actually have two of those in your brain, one on your left side, one on your right side, and it has to do with basically drive and willpower. The
Mm,
more things you do that you don't like doing, the bigger that area becomes. So you'll see like athletes or people who were overweight and then they lost a ton of weight. You'll see that these areas are really large, which means that if you're used to doing things you don't like to do, you're also less likely to be addicted about things
yeah,
because you're used to that. Oh, this sucks, but I'm used to that sucky feeling.
yeah, totally, man. I mean, it doesn't surprise me. I've heard Huberman talk about that. Not with, what did you call the part of the brain?
Mid cingulate cortex.
Cool, mid-cingulate cortex. So I've heard him talk about that notion of doing hard things and the consequences of it, not with not having yet identified the name of that part of the brain, but I can identify personally with that. Like as a kid, I was overweight, and then I became like a pretty hardcore athlete, and I move and I work out physically every day of my life. Like this morning I did, every day. I love movement and exertion.
Oh, nice.
And I tend not to have like an addictive personality. Things I don't find things addictive really. I mean, I may be addicted to movement and physical activity, and I also might be kind of addicted to like
That's a good kind
work.
of addiction, though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And like I love working and creating and um but yeah, I understand, and it's cool that you share that. The more or things like ice baths, for example. I don't know if you do those, but
Yeah.
like they're hard. Like they don't at first they don't feel good, but then like the more you do it, kind of the more you're just like, yeah, I can do this, and you become a bit desensitized, but at the same time you derive the benefit from it, and then you can apply that to all areas of your life. Because to create something really powerful and beneficial, it's likely going to require some difficulty and struggle. And if you can endure through that, then the opportunity on the other side, like the reward, the fulfillment is so incredibly powerful. But you wouldn't have been able to get there unless you could have subjected yourself to some of the hardship.
Oh yeah, and I think that's exactly what humans will need throughout their development. They need that kind of hardship, whether it happens and it's incidental. Like you listen to some of the best self-made people out there in the world, and more often than not, they have had hard experiences. They have had things they had to go through, which eventually like kickstarted their growth. And like you said, that the ice baths is definitely one of them. I don't have like a proper ice bath. I have my bathtub. I live in an apartment, and I'll tell you what, during winter that water gets so cold. It's not as cold in the summer because the pipes are warmer, so if you go full cold it's manageable. But in the winter, oh my god, I actually did one before the podcast and my skin was all red and I was shaking and I was numb, and it sucked, but I felt great afterwards.
Yeah, man. Oh, totally. I love that you have that setup, and I can certainly empathize with the difference of how the water feels when you're in a cold climate versus being in a hot one when you crank it all the way.
Yeah.
It's that I mean, it's equivalent to an ice bath, even if the temperature is a bit different. Personally, I find like below a certain level, I'm not even able to differentiate that much. It's just like my brain and body are registering it as like this is extremely cold, and I think you get
Yeah.
the same benefit.
Yeah. How cold do you normally go, or for how long?
Um, some of my friends run this. They founded this company in Canada that's now expanding into the U.S. and I'm sure globally. It's called Othership, and it's
Okay.
like sauna and ice bath, and it's wonderful, like really incredible community. And the ice baths they have there, I think they range anywhere between like 0 degrees Celsius and up to 6 degrees Celsius,
Right.
just depending like how many people might have cycled through it. It'll affect the temperature. But like I've even had the experience of going into the lake, and like 8 degree water that's moving will feel more intense than 0 degree water that's still.
Oh yeah.
Um, yeah, and I've been in 2 degree water that's moving. Like it's actually I've been in -1 degree water because we like broke through the ice. So like it depends, and I'll stay like I kind of treat 2 minutes as like the baseline, as like that. I think that's when you
Right.
derive like a lot of the benefits come in the first 30 seconds, and then I think you get
Mhm.
most of them within 2 minutes. And then I think when you go beyond that, a lot of it's just about like willpower, and actually you can begin to acclimatize and feel more comfortable the longer you spend in it. I think the longest I've ever gone though is like 6 minutes. My fiance's gone like 11 minutes. I have some
Damn.
friends who've gone like 20, but I usually just do like 2 to 3 minutes.
Yeah, yeah, about the same. I do 2 to 3 minutes. I've been doing 2 to 3 minutes in the winter when the water is a lot colder. I had to make up for it in the summer, so I stay longer. I go like 11, 15 minutes, or however long it takes until I feel like
Nice.
I hate this. And then once I get to that point, I just get out. But this is cool. I didn't know about other ship. I just checked it out now. That seems like a really cool idea.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. And some of my best friends, and yeah, they're really growing. It's really cool to see.
That's sweet, dude. Do you have any announcements at all, or any upcoming things that you wish to announce regarding Horizon? Any developments, any games, anything new and up and coming that people should be aware of?
Yeah, I would say just stay tuned to sequence.xyz and like follow our Twitter on there, because we'll be announcing more and more gaming partnerships. really exciting games over like all of this year and into the years to come. There's some big exciting games coming, and some also like really cool indie games in the pipeline. And yeah, just try. Oh, and also if you're a gamer like Skyweaver, there's a big update coming soon, so pay attention to skyweaver.net and follow the Twitter there. And yeah, actually, we'll later be announcing a really big hire that joined our team, but I can't disclose who it is yet. So, but just yeah, follow our socials and you'll be up to date. And if you are a dev, go try out Sequence Builder at sequence.build. I think you'll find it really powerful, really easy to use, and of course, we're always open to feedback if you think of issues you're having with it or new ideas for it. So yeah.
Awesome, dude. Well, thanks a lot for the amazing conversation. It's been a pleasure having you here. I do have one more thing that I meant to ask and I forgot and just came back into my mind now. You guys have managed to partner up and secure investments for some of the biggest gaming studios out there. One of them is Take Two, which is the parent company of Rockstar. Are we expecting Rockstar to step into Web3? And are we expecting GTA 6 to have cryptocurrencies? Is the question on everyone's mind.
I hope so, but nothing official yet. I don't think they'll have anything when GTA 6 first comes out. But because it's a live operations game, um, there's nothing stopping it from having Web3 in the future. Because GTA 5's been rocking for what, 10 years or
Yeah,
11
more than
now?
10 years. Yeah.
So I think GTA 6, they're probably hoping and planning for it to last that long as well. So it can release without Web3 and blockchain, but then add in the future. Nothing official yet, though. And yeah, but we are really fortunate to have Take Two as an investor in Horizon. They've been incredibly supportive. Also, Ubisoft as an investor. And then in like the Web3 space, Coinbase, Polygon, Brevin Howard was our lead investor in
Right.
our Series A, and we've been really fortunate to have the support of some of the most visionary and brilliant tech, gaming, and venture investors and companies in the world.
Right. Well, it does look like there's a lot of talent and a lot of passion there for making great products and great games. And all of these gaming studios are in really safe hands when it comes to building Web3 infrastructure. And I'm happy and excited about your guys' partnerships. And I'm really looking forward to see what are the new things that you guys going to be building, as well as some of the games that are definitely going to come out that are going to be using your stack. Once again, great conversation, man. Thanks a lot, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks so much, Andre, and thanks to everyone listening.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Bye.